The impossible arrival. The energy shields around the Galactic Assembly's central citadel flickered for just a fraction of a second. In that brief moment, every sensor array, every detection grid, and every warning system across the most protected space in the known universe registered nothing. Then, as if reality itself had been rewritten, a warship simply existed where nothing had been before. The silent intrusion commander Vexler stood frozen at his monitoring station, all 6 of his eyes fixed on the holographic display before him. His scales turned a pale shade of green, the color his species displayed when confronted with something their minds could not process. He had served as the chief security officer of the Galactic Assembly for 43 cycles, and in all that time, nothing had ever penetrated the inner sanctum without authorization. "Run full diagnostics," he commanded, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. "Check every system. This must be a malfunction." Around him, dozens of technicians from various species worked frantically at their stations. The control room, normally a place of calm efficiency, had erupted into controlled chaos. Alarm lights bathed everything in a pulsing red glow. "Commander," a young Prelian technician called out, her voice trembling. "All systems report normal function. No malfunctions detected. The vessel is real. It's just..." There. Vexler moved to the central display, expanding the image of the intruding. It was massive, easily matching the size of an assembly battlecruiser, but its design was unlike anything in the galactic databases. The hull appeared to be constructed from a dark metallic alloy that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, and there were no visible weapon ports, no engine exhausts, no communication arrays. It was as if someone had built a warship according to principles the galaxy had never encountered. "How far is it from the assembly core?" 2,000 kilometers, Commander, well within the exclusion zone. The exclusion zone, a sphere of space protected by technology from over 900 different civilizations, each contributing their most advanced defensive systems. Nothing was supposed to breach it. Nothing ever had. The emergency session within the grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly, panic spread like wildfire through a dry forest. Representatives from 917 member species filled the vast amphitheater, their voices rising in a cacophony of fear, anger, and confusion. Some demanded immediate military action, others called for evacuation. A few simply sat in stunned silence at the center of the chamber, on the elevated platform reserved for the ruling council. High Arbiter Kellerman raised his 3 arms, calling for order. He was a Theron, one of the founding species of the Assembly, and his word carried the weight of 5,000 years of galactic governance. "Please," his voice boomed through the chamber, amplified by technology that ensured every species could hear in their own frequency range. "We must approach this situation with reason, not fear." "Reason?" Ambassador Kixta's voice cut through the din, her crystalline body refracting light in sharp, angry patterns. "Something has violated our most sacred space. This is not a time for reason. This is a time for action." Before Kellerman could respond, every display screen in the chamber activated simultaneously. The mysterious warship filled every surface, its dark hull rotating slowly to present what appeared to be a communication array. Then, for the first time, the ship transmitted. The message was brief, broadcast in standard Galactic, the common language established millennia ago for interspecies communication. But there was something about the accent, the pronunciation, that marked it as archaic, as if whoever was speaking had learned the language from very old records. "This is Captain Sarah Conquo of the Terran defense vessel Horizon's Edge. We request immediate audience with the Galactic Assembly. We have matters of critical importance to discuss." The chamber fell absolutely silent. Then someone whispered a word that sent chills through every representative present. Terran. Human. The forgotten species High Arbiter Kellerman felt his primary heart skip a beat. He gestured to his aide, a young Corthan with quick fingers and a sharp memory. "Pull the files, species designation Terran, homeworld classification Earth, origin system Sol, immediately." The aide's fingers flew across his data interface, searching through millions of records. Within moments, he had found what he was looking for, and the color drained from his face. "High Arbiter, the file is classified under Containment Protocol 7. The last update was logged 96 cycles ago." Containment Protocol 7. Kellerman felt a weight settle in his chest. He knew what that meant. It was a protocol rarely used, reserved for pre-spaceflight civilizations that showed potential for rapid advancement, but were deemed too dangerous or unpredictable to contact. Such species were monitored, studied, and most importantly, contained within their home systems until the assembly deemed them ready for contact. Override the classification, Kellerman commanded. Authorization. High Arbiter, Kellerman, code sequence Alpha 77 Omega. The file opened and what Kellerman saw made his blood run cold. The Terrans had been classified as pre-spaceflight 273 cycles ago. According to the last observation report, they had barely achieved primitive chemical rocket propulsion. They were nowhere near developing faster than light travel, let alone the kind of technology that could bypass assembly defenses. Yet there was their ship, sitting in the most protected space in the galaxy, as if it had every right to be there. How is this possible? Ambassador Kixta demanded, reading the same information on her own display. According to these records, they should still be confined to their planet. They don't even have fusion power. Kellerman scrolled through the file, looking for answers. What he found instead raised more questions. The observation protocols had been clear. Passive monitoring only, no interference, no contact. Standard procedure for developing civilizations. But as he dug deeper into the classified sections, he found something that made him feel sick. Deployment orders. Dated 273 cycles ago. Authorization for the installation of automated defense platforms around the Sol system. Not monitoring satellites. Defense platforms. Weapons. Who authorized this? Kellerman whispered, his voice barely audible. The answer appeared on his screen. 7 signatures. 7 members of the Founders' Council. 7 species that had voted in secret to imprison an entire civilization within their own star system. The messenger arrives. The human ship remained motionless, waiting. Commander Vexler had deployed the Assembly's defense fleet, 300 warships forming a perimeter around the dark vessel. Every weapon system was armed and ready, but no one had given the order to fire. The ship had made no hostile moves, transmitted no threats. It simply waited, as if it had all the time in the universe. High Arbiter Kellerman stood in the docking bay, surrounded by security forces. He had agreed to meet with the human envoy in person, against the advice of his entire security team. But something told him that if he did not face this situation directly, the consequences would be far worse than any personal danger he might face. The human shuttle was small, barely large enough for a single occupant. It approached the docking bay with precise, controlled movements, demonstrating a level of piloting skill that impressed even the veteran dock workers. As it settled onto the landing platform, Kellerman noticed something strange about its hull. Like the larger warship, it seemed to absorb sensor scans rather than reflect them. His security teams were having difficulty maintaining accurate readings. The shuttle's door opened, and a figure emerged. Captain Sarah Okonkwo was not what Kellerman had expected. She was tall by human standards with dark skin and close-cropped hair. She wore a uniform that was simple yet elegant, black with silver trim and insignia that Kellerman did not recognize. But what struck him most were her eyes. What her eyes? They held a depth of experience, a weariness that spoke of long years and hard decisions. These were not the eyes of a primitive species making first contact. These were the eyes of someone who had seen war and carried its weight. She walked down the shuttle's ramp with confident, measured step. When she reached the bottom, she stopped and offered a gesture that the Assembly's cultural database identified as a human greeting. A slight bow of the head, acknowledging respect without submission. "Hi, Arbiter Kellerman," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Thank you for agreeing to see me. I am Captain Sarah Okonkwo, representing the Terran Coalition." "Clave, we have much to discuss." Kellerman returned the gesture, bowing his central head. "Captain Okonkwo, your arrival has caused considerable concern. Your ship appeared without any warning, bypassing defenses that have protected this station for millennia. I must ask, how did you do this?" Sarah's expression remained neutral, but Kellerman thought he detected a hint of something in her eyes. Not quite amusement, but perhaps satisfaction. "We learned from the best, High Arbiter. We learned from you. The truth emerges the Grand Chamber had never held so much tension. Captain Sarah Okonkwo stood at the center of the amphitheater, alone, facing 917 species who regarded her with everything from curiosity to outright hostility. She showed no sign of fear or intimidation. Instead, she reached into her uniform and withdrew a small device. "With your permission, High Arbiter," she said, looking up at Kellerman on his elevated platform, "I would like to present evidence." Kellerman nodded slowly. "Proceed." Sarah activated the device and a holographic projection filled the center of the chamber. What appeared made several representatives gasp, some in shock, others in recognition. The images showed space. Darkness between stars. And in that darkness, wreckage, hundreds of pieces of debris, scattered across vast distances. But these were not natural asteroids or comet fragments. These were the remains of ships, human ships, 273 cycles ago. Sarah began, her voice carrying through the chamber with the same amplification technology available to all speakers. Humanity achieved spaceflight. We were excited, hopeful. We believed we were ready to join the greater galactic community. We built colony ships, exploration vessels, science stations. We sent them out beyond our home system, eager to make contact, to learn, to grow. Hologram changed, showing a sleek vessel with Earth designation markings. It was primitive by assembly standards, but there was something beautiful about its simple design. This was the pioneer's hope. 7,000 colonists, including 3,000 children. Their destination was the fourth planet in the system you call Proxima. They never arrived. The image shifted, showing the same ship now torn apart, its hull breached in dozens of places. Bodies floated in the vacuum, frozen in their final moments. For 270 cycles, humanity tried to reach the stars. We sent out hundreds of ships, colony vessels, trading expeditions. The scientific mission, every single one that crossed an invisible boundary at the edge of our system, was destroyed. No warning, no communication. Just instant, total annihilation. The hologram now showed multiple wreckage sites, each one a testament to lives lost and dreams shattered. We recovered fragments. We found black boxes. We knew someone was killing us, but we didn't know who or why. We buried millions of people, High Arbiter. Entire families, scientists, explorers, children who would never see the stars they dreamed about. Sarah turned, looking around the chamber, making eye contact with as many representatives as she could. We did not understand. We thought perhaps we were breaking some law we didn't know about. We tried to communicate, to apologize for whatever offense we had given. But there was never any response. Just death over and over again. Ambassador Kixta stood from her seat. "These are serious accusations, Captain. But you have no proof that the Assembly was responsible for this." Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Don't I?" The hologram changed again. This time it showed a weapon platform. The design was clearly Assembly technology bearing the insignia of multiple member species, and at its core was a power signature that matched Assembly specifications exactly. We eventually stopped sending ships. Instead, we sent probes. Tiny, stealthy, expendable. We mapped the entire perimeter of our system. Do you know what we found? 473 automated defense platforms. All Assembly technology. All programmed to destroy anything of human origin that tried to leave our star system. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted questions, denials, accusations at each other. Some demanded to know who had authorized such a thing. Others insisted it must be a mistake, a misunderstanding. Kellerman raised his arms for silence. When the noise finally died down, he looked directly at Sarah. "Captain, even if what you say is true, containment protocols exist for good reason. Some species require observation before contact can be safely established." "Observation?" Sarah's voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath it. "Is that what you call murdering everyone who tries to leave their home?" "High Arbiter, humanity was imprisoned without trial, without even being informed that a galactic civilization existed. We were sentenced to isolation based on decisions made by species who had never even met us." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But here's what you need to understand. Humanity did not accept this sentence. We couldn't break through your barrier, so we found another way. We went around it. Under it. Through it. We developed technology that you don't have and apparently can't detect. We're not here because you allowed us to be. We're here because we decided to be. The power shift, the implications of Sarah's words crashed through the chamber like a tidal wave. If humanity had developed technology that could bypass assembly defenses, then no system in the galaxy was safe. The entire foundation of galactic security had just been called into question. How many ships do you have? Ambassador Kixta demanded as Sarah turned to face her. Enough. That's not an answer you're going to get, Ambassador. Because here's the thing you need to understand. Humanity spent 270 cycles locked in a cage. We had nothing to do but survive and prepare. We built factories on every planet in our system. We mined asteroids. We developed technology in secret, knowing that one day we would break free. And we did. She gestured to the hologram, which now showed Earth, surrounded by thousands of small dots. Every one of those dots is a ship, Ambassador, and Earth is just one of 17 human colonies. Colonies that were established using translocation technology that doesn't require traveling through the space you can monitor. We've been out here among you for 40 cycles, learning, recording everything. The chamber fell silent as the full weight of her revelation settled over everyone present. You've been spying on us, someone shouted. We've been doing exactly what you did to us, Sarah replied. Observing, learning, deciding whether you were safe to make contact with. And do you know what we found? She activated the device again, and new images appeared. Documents, communications, trade agreements, diplomatic cables, all bearing assembly seals and classifications. We found that the Galactic Assembly, this great civilization that claims to operate on principles of peace and cooperation, has been manipulating, suppressing, and exploiting developing species for thousands of cycles. We're not the only ones you've imprisoned. We're just the first ones to break free and call you on it. Kellerman felt the foundations of his world crumbling beneath him. He had served the Assembly for his entire adult life, believing in its mission, its principle. Now, looking at the evidence displayed before him, he wondered how many other lies he had been living. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. Sarah looked up at him, and for the first time he saw past her controlled exterior to the pain and anger beneath. "We want what you stole from us, High Arbiter. We want our place among the stars. We want recognition as a sovereign civilization, and we want to make sure that no other species ever suffers what we suffered." She gestured to the evidence, still hanging in the air. This information has already been transmitted to every major news network, every government, and every public information system in assembly space. By now, billions of beings across the galaxy know the truth. The question is, what are you going to do about it? As if to emphasize her point, Kellerman's personal communicator began vibrating with incoming messages, dozens of them. Then hundreds, representatives from across the galaxy demanding explanations, news agencies requesting statements, member species threatening to withdraw from the assembly. The galaxy was changing, and there was no going back. The reckoning, the grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly, had descended into utter chaos. Representatives shouted at each other, demanded investigations, and hurled accusations across the amphitheater. Some called for Captain Sarah Okonkwo to be arrested for espionage. Others demanded the immediate dissolution of the Founders' Council. A few simply sat in stunned silence, trying to process the revelation that their entire understanding of galactic civilization had been built on lies. High Arbiter Kellerman stood at his platform, watching the carefully constructed order of millennia crumble before his eyes. His communicator continued to vibrate with incoming messages, each one more urgent than the last. Governments were demanding answers. News agencies were broadcasting the leaked information across every channel. And somewhere in the chaos, he could hear the foundations of the assembly beginning to crack. The alliance reveals itself. Sarah Okonkwo remained at the center of the chamber, unmoved by the storm swirling around her. She waited, patient and calm, as if she had expected exactly this response. When the noise reached a crescendo, she raised her hand, and suddenly, every display in the chamber activated again. This time, it wasn't evidence of assembly crimes. It was a live transmission. The image showed a conference room, and seated around a large table were representatives from species that Kellerman recognized with growing dread. Dracorath, classified as pre-spaceflight, and contained 40 cycles ago. The Velkan contained 60 cycles ago. The Saurian Collective contained 90 cycles ago, And others, 15 species in total, all of them supposedly still confined to their home systems, all of them sitting together in what was clearly a human ship. "Hello, Galactic Assembly," said a Korath female, her scales marked with the patterns of a high-ranking leader. "I am Matriarch Valkyra of the Korath Dominion. On behalf of the Alliance of Free Species, I bring you greetings and a message." The chamber fell silent. Every representative stared at the screen in disbelief. "The humans found us 32 cycles ago," Valkyra continued. "They shared their technology, their knowledge, and most importantly, their truth. They told us that we were not alone in being imprisoned. They showed us that the cage we lived in was not of our own making, and they offered us a choice: remain isolated and forgotten, or join them in demanding justice." Another figure leaned forward into the camera view. A Vulcan, his crystalline structure pulsing with colors that indicated strong emotion. "I am Prime Harmonist Quex of the Vulcan Unity. For 60 cycles, my people believed we were the only intelligent life in the universe. We thought our attempts to reach beyond our system failed due to our own technological inadequacies. We never imagined that someone was actively preventing us from achieving our dreams." One by one, each representative spoke, telling the same story. Isolation, confusion, lost lives and shattered hopes, and then humanity's arrival, offering not conquest but liberation. "The Alliance of Free Species represents 16 civilizations," Sarah said, reclaiming the chamber's attention. "We have a combined population of 47 billion beings. We have technology that rivals or exceeds assembly standards, and we have fleets positioned throughout what you call neutral space. We've been there for cycles, High Arbiter. Watching, waiting, planning for this moment." Ambassador Kixta's crystalline body flashed with angry red hues. "This is an act of war. How many civilizations are imprisoned right now, being monitored by assembly observers who decide their fate without their knowledge or consent?" Kixta fell silent, unable or unwilling to answer. Kellerman spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. "Captain Okonkwo, what you're demanding would require a complete restructuring of assembly governance. Containment protocols have been in place for 5,000 cycles. They exist to prevent dangerous species from threatening galactic stability before they're ready for contact." "Dangerous?" Sarah's voice rose for the first time, anger breaking through her controlled demeanor. "My people were dangerous because we developed technology quickly, because we were curious about the universe, because we dreamed of touching the stars." She gestured to the screen showing the Alliance representatives. "Were the Korath dangerous because they valued family bonds above individual achievement? Were the Vulcan dangerous because their society operates on shared consciousness rather than individual competition?" She turned to face the entire chamber. "Or were we all dangerous because we didn't develop exactly the way you expected, because we didn't fit into your neat categories and predictions, because we represented something you couldn't control?" The evidence multiplies before anyone could respond. Sarah activated her device again. This time, the holographic display showed something that made several representatives gasp in recognition. Financial records, trade agreements, resource extraction contracts, all bearing assembly seals, all involving what the documents labeled as observation zones, but what were clearly worlds under containment. "While you kept us locked away," Sarah continued, "you weren't just observing. You were profiting. Mining rights sold to private corporations, biological samples extracted and sold to research facilities, even cultural artifacts taken from pre-contact civilizations for private collections." The hologram shifted to show a specific transaction. A Korath religious artifact, stolen from their world before they achieved spaceflight, now sitting in the private collection of a wealthy assembly member. "That is the sacred flame of our ancestors," Matriarch Valkyra said from the transmission screen, her voice trembling with barely controlled rage. "It was taken from our most holy site 300 cycles ago. We thought it was lost in a natural disaster. Now we learn it was stolen, sold, displayed as a curiosity by someone who had no right to touch it." More evidence flashed across the displays. Genetic samples from the Vulcan sold to biological research corporations. Mineral rights on pre-contact worlds auctioned to the highest bidder. Archaeological sites on developing planets raided for artifacts and treasures, The list went on, each revelation more damning than the last. "You didn't just imprison us," Sarah said quietly. "You exploited us. You treated developing civilizations as resources to be managed and harvested. And you did it all in secret, hiding behind protocols and classifications, ensuring that no one could question your actions." Kellerman felt sick. He had known about containment protocols, had even voted to maintain them, believing they were necessary for galactic security. But this systematic exploitation, this theft, this violation of sovereign worlds, he had never imagined the protocols were being abused so thoroughly. "I did not know," he said, his voice barely audible. "I swear I did not know it had gone this far." Sarah looked up at him, and he saw something in her eyes that might have been pity. "Perhaps you didn't, High Arbiter. Perhaps most of the Assembly representatives didn't. But someone knew. Someone authorized these transactions. Someone benefited from keeping entire civilizations locked away while their worlds were plundered." She paused, letting that sink in. "The question is, what are you going to do now that you know?" "Sure." Begins the chamber erupted again. But this time the anger was directed inward. Representatives demanded to know which assembly members had participated in the exploitation. Some called for immediate investigations. Others tried to deflect, claiming that such practices were common in galactic commerce and shouldn't be considered crimes. But the damage was done. The unity that had held the assembly together for thousands of cycles was crumbling, replaced by suspicion and accusation. Kellerman watched as Ambassador Kixta stood, her crystalline body now displaying colors that indicated deep distress. "Even if everything you say is true, Captain, you cannot simply tear down the galactic order. The Assembly has maintained peace for 5,000 cycles. Without it, there would be chaos, war, destruction on an unimaginable scale." "Peace?" Matriarch Valkyra's voice cut through from the transmission screen. "You call it peace when you imprison civilizations? When you steal from developing worlds? When you murder anyone who tries to break free from your cages? That is not peace, Ambassador. That is tyranny dressed in peaceful clothing." Sarah nodded. "The Alliance of Free Species does not want to destroy galactic civilization. We want to rebuild it. But it must be rebuilt on principles of actual consent, actual equality, actual justice, not the false promises that the current Assembly offers. And if we refuse," Kixta demanded. Sarah's expression hardened. "Then you will discover that the Alliance has prepared for that possibility as well." On cue, every sensor array in the station registered new contacts. Ships, hundreds of them, all appearing simultaneously throughout assembly space, using the same translocation technology that humanity had demonstrated. They weren't threatening, weren't activating weapons or shields. They were simply there, a reminder that the Alliance could go anywhere, appear anywhere, at any time. The message was clear. The Assembly no longer controlled galactic security. That age was over. The negotiation for 3 cycles, the Grand Chamber, remained in continuous session. Representatives argued, negotiated, and slowly, painfully, began to accept the reality of their situation. The old order was gone. The question now was what would replace it. Sarah and the other Alliance representatives participated in the discussions, but they were no longer supplicants requesting admission. They were equals, negotiating the terms of a new galactic framework. High Arbiter Kellerman, to his credit, did not try to maintain the old power structures. Instead, he worked tirelessly to broker a compromise that might prevent open warfare. He ordered the immediate deactivation of all containment protocols, the return of stolen artifacts and resources, and the opening of investigations into exploitation practices. But the Alliance wanted more. They wanted fundamental reform. The new Galactic Charter must enshrine certain principles, Sarah explained during one of the negotiating sessions. First, no civilization may be observed or monitored without their knowledge and consent. The second, all developing species must be offered first contact as soon as they achieve basic spaceflight capability. Third, exploitation of any kind is prohibited and will be treated as a crime against civilization itself. Those are major changes, Kellerman said. Many species will resist them. Then they will find themselves on the wrong side of history, Matriarch Valkyra interjected. The Alliance represents more than just the 16 species currently at this table. High Arbiter, we have been in contact with 47 other civilizations under your containment protocols. When they learn the truth, they will join us. Now they stood at the beginning of something unprecedented. Humanity's true first contact with galactic civilization, not as supplicants or primitives, but as equals who had earned their place through courage and defiance. Set course for Earth, Sarah commanded. It's time to go home. We have a lot of work ahead of us. As the horizon's edge turned toward the distant light of Sol, Sarah allowed herself a moment of reflection. They had won a great victory, exposed terrible crimes, and forced the galaxy to confront its own corruption. But victory was only the beginning. The real challenge would be building something better, creating a galactic civilization that truly lived up to its ideals rather than hiding behind them. And if the old guard tried to stop them, tried to restore the cages and the exploitation, then humanity and the Alliance would be ready. Because they had learned an important lesson in their centuries of captivity. Freedom once gained must be fiercely defended, and those who would take it away must be opposed at every turn. The uncertain future on Earth, billions of humans watched the return of the horizon's edge with tears streaming down their faces. For 273 cycles, they had lived in isolation, wondering if they would ever touch the stars, ever meet other, intelligent life. Now finally, they had their answer. The Confederation had opened trade negotiations, cultural exchange programs, and technology-sharing agreements. Human children would grow up in a galaxy that welcomed them rather than imprisoned them. Human scientists would study alongside researchers from hundreds of other species. Human artists would share their work with beings who saw the universe through completely different eyes. But in the shadows, in the systems controlled by species that had rejected the Confederation, other plans were being made. Plans to restore the old order. Plans to put the upstart humans and their alliance back in their place. Plans that would, in time, lead to new conflicts and new challenges. Sarah knew this, the Alliance knew this, and they were preparing. Because the galaxy had changed and there was no going back. The age of containment was over. The age of exploitation had ended. Now began the age of true galactic civilization, where all species stood as equals, where ancient powers no longer dictated the fates of entire civilizations in secret. It would not be easy. It would not be peaceful. There would be resistance, conflict, perhaps even war. But it would be honest. It would be just, and it would be worth fighting for. As the horizon's edge entered Earth's orbit, Sarah Okonkwo looked out at the blue world that had given birth to humanity and smiled. They had broken free. They had demanded justice, and they had won. Now came the hard part, proving they deserved it.